Thank you everyone for attending today's virtual open house for the graduate programs in spatial analysis for public health. At this point, you should be able to see our screen with the first presentation slide. We will be starting on time here in just a few minutes. Hello, everyone. We will begin the virtual open house for the graduate programs in spatial analysis for public health. I'm Kelly Curtis. I'm one of the admissions officers for these programs. I would like to introduce Frank Curriero and Tim Shields. Would you both like to share a little bit about your backgrounds?
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. Welcome, everybody. My name is Frank Curriero. I'm a professor in the epidemiology department at the Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm a statistician by training. I sit in the epi department because I enjoy working more on the front lines with people that are actually closer to the data. I've been working in the field of spatial analysis with a focus on spatial statistical methods for the past 20 plus years, and excited to talk to you a little bit today about our OPAL program in applied spatial analysis for public health.
Okay, I'll go next. Hi, everybody. I am Tim Shields. I am a geographer by training, and so I concentrate on GIS applications in public health. I've been working at Hopkins for 20, 25 years maybe or so. I've been working with Frank most of that time too. And we've been, I'm also in the epi department, and Frank and I are both in the Spatial Science for Public Health Center at Hopkins. So I guess my title is Associate Scientist, and also excited to be part of this program. It's an exciting time to be engaging with students in all things spatial. So.
Thank you, Frank and Tim. Today's agenda will cover an industry overview of spatial analysis. Program details will be presented along with the curriculum. And we'll share what online learning looks like here at Johns Hopkins with over 20 years of online experience and the level of support that we provide. Faculty will be presented. I'll cover admission requirements and touch on financial aid. There will be time at the end for questions to be answered. So as you have questions that come up during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box.
Okay, so let's get started. And why not best get started with just kind of defining what is spatial analysis? It could mean different things to different people. Some of the bullet points we have up here, it's the interpretation of geographic information through the use of mapping software and statistical analysis. You'll hear me emphasize that statistical analysis part throughout today's presentation, because I think that's one of the points that sets our program apart. Spatial analysis builds on the foundations in epidemiology and biostatistics. And we've created here at the school sort of what we call the comprehensive spatial science paradigm. And it includes components of spatial data, geographic information, which is all the technology and the software for mapping. And then it provides this field of spatial statistics. So tools and methods to help us go beyond the map and make some scientific inference about the patterns we see in the map. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Great. So, spatial analysis, it's been around for quite some time. Anytime you teach a course on spatial analysis, you'll see what's called the Jon Snows Map, the cholera map. This is going back in 1854. There was an outbreak of cholera in London. And at the time, cholera was thought to be an airborne disease. And Jon Snow actually thought it was a waterborne disease. And he mapped all the cases of cholera in this small area in London and showed that they were clustering around the water pump. You see that on the right-hand slide where the cases were clustered around this community water pump where people would go and get their drinking water. He removed the handle from that pump so nobody could use it, and the case distribution kind of dissipated. And that was one of the primary evidence that the water pump was a source of cholera and eventually made cholera what we know now to be a waterborne disease. So this is a famous application of spatial analysis way before we had computers and GIS and all the interesting mapping technology that we have today. Next slide, please. We fast forward a little bit to some current analysis, and this is a project that Tim and I have been involved in here at the school. This is looking at malaria risk and mapping malaria risk in parts of Southern Africa. And what we see here is we have a map for both the dry season and the rainy season. And you see two maps for each season. And one is a map of predicted malaria risk, and one is a map of the uncertainty in those predictions. And data was collected from households, collecting blood samples and running what they call rapid diagnostic tests to determine whether or not people were exposed to malaria. And we take that data and we build these spatial prediction models and then map those results. And that's what you see here. So a big leap from Jon Snows classic example to some of the more advanced technologies and mapping procedures that we have available today. Next slide, please. Some other examples of spatial analysis in the general media. People might be familiar with the CDC flu season, the flu report. They call it flu view. It's a tough one to say. And again, it's just showing maps of where flu is at different parts in the flu season. There was another great article in the New York Times back in 2017. It called "Endangered Species and the Stuff We Buy," all mapped out. And this was kind of showing our footprint in terms of the stuff we buy and how does it impact, endangered species across the globe. And that was an interesting read. But probably the most familiar, the most popular, the most enhanced example of spatial analysis in action is what we can see on the next slide. So we can go to the next slide, please. And a lot of people are probably familiar with this one. This is the Johns Hopkins COVID dashboard, which is became famous, and continues to be a well-known and well-popular resource to look at spatial data with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is probably one of the most powerful examples of the power of geography, okay, and the presentation of spatial information. Down at its core, it's just a very simple map of the data. But you can see how this has been referenced and how this has been used and continue to be used and continues to be referenced throughout the pandemic, providing a valuable data source and really promoting the use of spatial and location-based information to present, public health. And this is probably one of the most serious public health issues we have to deal with to date is the pandemic. So it's a great example of what we can do in spatial analysis, but we can also go beyond this and talk about how do we analyze some of these patterns. And a lot of people have taken this data, a lot of different universities and agencies and individuals have taken this data and done various analyses to kind of go beyond the map. And we teach some of those methods in this program. Next slide, please. So why spatial analysis? I mean, why do we want to get involved in spatial analysis? And a lot of times it's like an added benefit because you're doing already what you're doing, but now you're going to add location information to this. And how do things vary by location? And that may be a source of variation worth considering. The use of location information is probably exploded over the last decade or decade plus. The availability and accessibility of spatial information or location-based data. I mean, everybody has it now with your cell phones. What's near me, or using Waze to find out the best and easiest way to get from point A to point B. And the use of geospatial technology has been so widespread and diverse across so many different applications. And the U.S. Department of Labor and Growth says that the market is growing at an annual rate of almost 35%. And there's this increasing demand for readily available, consistent, accurate, complete, and current geographic information, and the expertise to deal with that and to deal with the use of these advanced technologies. And it offers such great job opportunities for people around the world and from different talents and educational backgrounds. Next slide, please. This was a great article. You know, it's really got a catchy title here. What gets measured gets done. And that is so true, you know, that when the data exists for something, that's what we build sometimes hypotheses around. And that's what we use to test our hypotheses and build policy around. You know, and health departments and other health agencies, you know, they recognize there is an urgent need for more timely and more geographic specific data at the neighborhood level, sometimes what we call the census tract level, as opposed to getting data just at the regional level or state level, because we need this more specific spatial data to more efficiently and effectively address a lot of the most pressing problems in public health, because a lot of times it's happening at the neighborhood level. And if we only have information at the state level, we're going to miss that important variation at the smaller or at the neighborhood level. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of different career paths that where you can go with expertise in spatial analysis. Some that are more narrowly focused and some are more general in terms of encompassing a lot of different fields. Spatial analysis for public health can be used among other traditional public health careers. So it could be sort of that added benefit. Now I've got, you know, what I'm doing now, but now I can add spatial expertise to it and mapping expertise to that. Or you can just start anew and go in to some of these job titles that are specific to spatial analysis. Environmental health officer, GIS software developer, cartographer, visualization specialist, a GIS scientist, a geographic information scientist, geospatial data administrator, and even spatial statistician. These are just some examples of possible job titles that somebody could be competitive for with expertise in spatial analysis. Next slide, please. So if we tracked our alumni, I think we're in our 6th year of this online program. And so we've had a lot of students come in and go out, and some stayed in their current jobs. Some went to new jobs. Some were statisticians, GIS data analysts, you know, epidemiologists, faculty at universities. You know, in terms of the public and private sectors, you know, there's CDC, Department of Homeland Security. These are all examples of where some of our students have went. You know, certain health departments, utility companies, big data institutes, you know, geospatial epidemiology consultants, you know, even applications within the centers of disease control, you know, sustainable energy and health, you know, oncology, global burden of disease, patterns of health disease. These are all examples of where our alumni have went after this program, or where they enhanced their current existing knowledge in their current job with expertise that they learned in the program. So you can see it's pretty widespread in terms of what's available to you with expertise in spatial analysis. Next slide, please. So let me give you some program details about the curriculum. So we have both a master's and a certificate program. The master's is 2 years, and it's 50.5 credits. And the graduate certificate can be done in 1 year, and it's just 18 credits. Hopkins is on 4 terms as opposed to 2 semesters. So we have 2 terms in the fall and then 2 terms in the spring. And this program is very much a skill-based orientation, and it's oriented towards working professionals. It's part-time, 100% online, you know, and our instructional approach is targeted and current. So there's a lot of group learning, peer assessment, you know, it's all skills oriented, you know, project-based examples, a lot of hands-on learning. You know, I can speak for all the spatial classes, which take up, you know, a large proportion of the curriculum, is that, you know, we don't have any exams. You know, it's all problem sets and assignments and a lot of sometimes group work and, like I said, peer assessment. So it's very much of a community type learning environment, which I think is better geared towards working professionals. We focus both on local and global issues. You know, our goal is to prepare students to address public health problems through this multidisciplinary approaches that applies the latest scientific knowledge. Next slide, please. So here's the curriculum, and you can look at this curriculum online. I'm not going to go through every course here. There are core courses in spatial analysis that I want to touch on. So in term 1, you're going to get spatial analysis for public health. That's a 4-credit course on GIS and learning that GIS mapping software. In term 2, you're going to talk about spatial data technologies for mapping. This is all the advancing technology so that we can obtain, collect, and create spatial data. For the master's program, you're going to have an EPI class and a health statistics class. Okay, and then in your second year, you're going to follow up with a second term of statistics and a second term of epidemiology, and then you end your second year with a course on applied spatial statistics, and in the fourth term, on one called spatial applications, which is sort of like a statistics part 2. You learn all the methods in the applied spatial statistics course, and then you have this spatial applications course in your last term of your second year that really has you apply all these methods to various different applications. 2 selling points of our program here. One is we have dedicated courses in spatial statistics. A lot of other programs, if they teach any methods of spatial statistics, they might be wrapped within the GIS classes. We move outside of GIS, and we have these 2 courses, applied spatial statistics and spatial applications, that focus on spatial statistical methods. So you're getting a lot, and I think that is a distinguishing feature of our program from other programs. Another distinguishing feature is this thing called an integrative activity, which for those in the master's program, this is your culminating experience. It's your capstone, it's your thesis, and we start working on this actually in year 1 with you. And an important feature about that integrative activity is that we allow students to bring in their own data if they want. So if they're working on a project or they have interest in a project, you're allowed to bring that in and build a proposal around that data set, around that public health issue that you're interested in, and then follow through with that as your integrative activity and complete a comprehensive spatial analysis of that public health issue with the data that you have. That's not a requirement for those who don't have data or don't want to bring in their own data. We provide sort of what we call these design projects that you can use for an integrative activity, but we like to have it open for students to bring in their own data as well. What's not on here is the certificate program. It's footnoted there at the bottom. The certificate program is 1 year, and it just goes through those core spatial classes. The certificate students don't have a integrative activity. It's just a 1-year program, and they're in the same exact courses as the master's students. They're just overlapping with those courses in year 1 and year 2. And again, you can get more details on this curriculum on our website. Next slide, please. So online learning at the School of Public Health. We've done a lot of online learning since the pandemic, but actually, the school started this back in the very early 2000s, 20 plus years experience in online learning. And courses are developed with high production value. So Tim and I, we go in the studio and we record these lectures, unlike what we're doing right now. So these are the lectures that you will hear are previously developed, and they're recorded with high production value. We have a lot of online course activities to keep students engaged throughout the program, but we have something called live talks. So every class has 3 or 4 live talks throughout the term, and the term is just 8 weeks long. So it's almost like every 2 weeks you have a live talk where the instructor comes on live like we are now and talks to students and answers questions and probably gives a short presentation about some topic that course is going on, talks about the assignments. And it's a great way for us to engage with the students and vice versa with the students to engage with us. There's a 24/7 help desk for the online learning site. Next slide, please. And that online learning site, it's called Course Plus. It's the learning management tool that we use here at the school. The platform is great. I mean, everything is on Course Plus, and not just the online students that use Course Plus. Even for the on-site classes, we use Course Plus because we put all the material there. So you can go and get all the material And this is also where you will access the lectures, you will submit assignments, and so forth, and look at the schedule, the syllabus. All the information about the course is posted on this Course Plus site. And each class has its separate Course Plus site. What's also a nice feature about the Course Plus site is what's called the discussion forum. This is an open portal where you can submit questions or comments about anything, about the lectures, about assignments, and every student sees that. And everybody starts answering and responding back. So you're sort of getting this peer collaboration going back and forth. And then the instructors themselves also engage on the discussion forum. And there's teaching assistants that for each course as well that engages on there. So it's a great way to get more immediate feedback on assignments and so forth, as opposed to waiting for an office hour for one of the teaching assistants. You can actually go on the discussion forum anytime, and students see that immediately. So Course Plus is a great management tool that we use here at the school. Next slide, please. So here we are. You see Tim and I on here. I'm not going to go through these other names, but Tim and I teach the spatial courses, you know, and then Rosa, John, Elizabeth, Aruna, and Amal, they teach the EPI and the biostat courses throughout. And there's some other courses in there, professional development courses that are sprinkled throughout, you know, especially for the Masters of Applied Science program. These are all great instructors. And so we're lucky to have them on board with us in this program. Next slide, please. Kelly, I think you'll take over from here.
Thank you, Frank, for sharing great details about the program. I will touch on the application requirements. We use an application portal called SOFIS for the master's programs. For the graduate certificates, we use SOFIS Express. A bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university is required, and sufficient prior quantitative coursework or other evidence of quantitative ability is also required. You upload a resume or current CV. For the master's programs, 3 recommendation letters. For the graduate certificate, 1 recommendation letter. And then the statement of purpose is an important part of your application. It should show how your educational and career goals align with the program. For our international students, you may need an exam showing proficiency in English. And all education earned outside of the US must undergo a course-by-course evaluation. We recommend using WES or World Education Service. So as soon as your file is complete for either the master's or the graduate certificate, it will go over to the admission committee. So they do review applicants on a rolling basis. As soon as your file is complete, the sooner you'll get an admission decision. For the master's programs, June 1st is the deadline. And for the graduate certificates, July 1st. We have 1 start a year. This year it starts August 29th. So the current tuition is $1,270 per credit hour. There is an OPAL scholarship awarded, $488 per credit hour. There's no separate application steps that one needs to do to receive this partial OPAL scholarship. It is automatic for those who are accepted into the program. And so what that does is it brings the cost of the student down to $782 per credit hour. With 18 credits for the graduate certificate, you're looking at $14,076. For the master's at 50.5 credits, you're looking at $39,491. You pay for those courses or credits as you take them in each 8-week term. And then beyond the OPAL scholarship, The financial aid office is available to provide assistance with federal and private loans. Their contact information is listed on this slide. So if you haven't typed in your question and you have one, please go ahead and type that in the Q&A box. We look forward to getting your questions answered. So a common question is, for those that are looking at the graduate certificate, what kind of quantitative experience you're looking for if they don't have, say, a statistics class prior to applying to the program?
Sure, we get that question a lot, Kelly. So, the difference between the MAS and the certificate is the MAS has coursework, 2 courses in biostatistics and 2 courses in epidemiology. So we want to see students that are applying to the certificate to have that background already. And in terms of the quantitative statistics background, because I know that varies from school to school, is we want you familiar with regression. So not just linear regression, but logistic regression and Poisson regression. So if you've had statistics courses that include those types of regression, then you should be good for the certificate program, in addition to having background in public health or epidemiology already.
Great. We have a question. What GIS software is being used in the courses? Is it strictly ARC, or are there opportunities to use open source or web GIS applications?
Maybe
I'll let Tim tackle that one. Yeah.
Yes. The courses, well, at least the first 2 courses, are taught in ARC GIS Pro. It's just the leading software in the whole industry, and I think especially the COVID dashboard there, I think even elevated Esri's product even higher. So that's the most widely used. So we use ARC. That said, in our second term course, we do bring in QGIS, just to kind of go through, get familiar with it. The concepts of a GIS are really the same, whether it's QGIS or MapInfo or ARC or what have you. So that's why we stick to ARC. Students have used QGIS, and I'm fine with whatever software you want. We really lay everything out in the ARC GIS world for you. But I am aware that, QGIS is huge. So if you want to do work in QGIS, that's absolutely great. We do get into some ArcGIS online web applications. So that's what we use for that. All right, that's the quick answer on the GIS we used. We also get into R, and maybe I'll flip it back to Frank, who's runs more of the R programs, but we use that as a GIS as well. So Frank, maybe you want to give a brief.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim. So for the GIS software, Tim, it's mostly based on the Esri products. When we get to spatial statistics, we teach that in R. So we move out of the GIS programs and we work in R. And R is a really popular software nowadays for scientific computing, and its power continues to increase. And R can almost act like a GIS itself. And so we give instruction on R, and we use the R programming language to do all of our spatial statistics. And at the end, when people are doing, for example, their integrative activity, they have a choice whether to go back and use some of the Esri products, some of ARC Pro and R, or maybe they want to do it all in R, or maybe all in ARC if they can. Again, we teach the methods, and we make that available to students. And then at the end, when they're doing some of their culminating analyses and stuff like that, they're able to choose whichever software they're more comfortable with.
And Frank, I should add, all the software is provided. I mean, R is open source, Q is open source, but ArcGIS you need a license for, and we have a university site license. So right. All students will have a Hopkins ID, and that's your ticket or your entryway into access to all the software.
And does that happen in about the second 8-week term?
No, right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
Week 1, we're using ArcGIS.
Okay. Is it usually about 18 hours? That's my understanding.
Kelly, I think you cut out there a little bit. Was there a question that preceded the 18-hour comment?
Yeah, I just saw I had a little internet disconnect. So the question was hourly commitment if you're taking 2 classes in each 8-week term. And I think my understanding, and you can elaborate on this, is when you're taking 2 classes in an 8-week term, just about 18 hours with everything involved in this, interactive curriculum.
Yes, that is the approximate number that we throw out there. Some weeks it's less, maybe some weeks it's more. On average, it's about 18. Yeah, and at least I can speak for the spatial classes that, we put deadlines down when things are due, but we're extremely flexible with that because, everybody here is not a full-time student with only having to worry about that. We're all working professionals. We have lives and stuff tends to happen, when, the best laid plans to give yourself 3 hours to finish up, the assignment tonight. And sometimes that doesn't happen because of other things. And so we're conscious of that and we're certainly flexible with those kind of things.
And with go ahead, Tim.
Just also being sensitive to these deadlines, we do our best to post all of our materials and like the assignment, and usually you have generally 2 weeks. That's just a general time span to get your assignment done, and you have all the materials. So then you can you can reconcile that with your other lives, your work life or your personal life, and if you have big projects or something going on at work, how you can budget your time accordingly. So we try to give you the biggest heads up and the biggest opportunity to be able to schedule when and how you want to get your work done. So we try to lessen the stress associated with these deadlines by trying to give you as much information up front.
Right, and we have office hours. The teaching assistants have office hours in evenings, on the weekends, also to be more accommodating to working professionals.
And if you are concerned about taking 2 classes in each 8-week term, we do offer the flexibility of taking 1 class, and you have up to 4 years to graduate. So if you're more comfortable taking 1 course, that is an option.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have examples of a couple of the integrative activities that students that are finishing the master's have completed?
Tim, you want to give a few?
The fun thing about these, right, is students, a big portion of, take their own interest and they follow it. So somebody was into big data and they were mining Twitter data, and they could, scrape the Twitter feedings and get a location from where the Twitter thing evolved from and link that to opioid use. Others look for data sets, maybe I know down in South Carolina, we had a student who was interested, he was working with the Department of Health for a county, and he was looking at opioids across the state. And he was mapping that and analyzing access to health facilities and mental health facilities and looking for relations there. Frank mentioned we have design packages. Maybe you want to touch the topics that they have.
Yeah, so we have 3 design, what we call design projects. One is an air pollution mapping in the state of California. Another is a chronic disease analysis at the county level in Texas, and another one, the third one, looks at generating food deserts, which are pretty popular nowadays. And Tim actually covers methodology and a case study on food desert in the in the first GIS course. We've also had ones that looked at crime data and the clustering of crime data around methadone clinics and talking about victim-based crime versus non-victim-based crimes, and do we see clustering of more around these centers than other types of crime. So it's a large variety of these integrative activity topics, which makes it interesting for us because we've seen a lot throughout the years.
Yeah, thank you. Those all sound really interesting. If someone is going to be in the Baltimore area, can they meet with faculty?
Of course, I think we're getting back to the workplace. Prior to the pandemic, we had a couple people that were local, and yeah, they would come by for, if they wanted to do office hours in person or set an appointment to talk with Tim, I, or one of the teaching assistants, and also just to engage on activities and events that are going on at the school. I mean, you're a Hopkins student at that point. You have a badge and you can get in and out just like everybody else. You go to graduation just like everybody else. It's just that your education is 100% online. But if you're local, you're certainly welcome to come by, and even if it's just a visit to say hello, that's perfectly fine. The last 2 years that have been a challenge, but we're now slowly getting back to the workplace in some hybrid versions, so that is available again.
I would add too, Frank, students also, you get the list of all lectures that are presented. So many of which, or especially the last few years, are online as well. So you can attend online, and obviously if you're in the area, you can pop in. That's just a rich resource of exciting topics to learn more about there.
And if one wanted to walk for graduation upon finishing the master's, is that a possibility?
Yes, it certainly is. Certificates as well. Everybody invited to graduation.
In fact, we should mention, generally, the pandemic has kind of interrupted this, but we've had the night before the graduation ceremony, we had like a social gathering where everybody can gather together, and there's some food and drink, and it's real face-to-face time for a lot of the students with each other and with us, which is always a nice event as well. So I expect that should resume next year.
I think we're going to try it this year.
I think
they're scheduling something the night before graduation this year.
Yeah.
That's great that we're getting back to normal.
Yeah.
We have a question. Is this program strictly for those who already have professional experience, or are recent graduates from undergraduate programs encouraged to apply as well?
Yeah, we encourage everybody that has an interest to apply. So it's not strictly for professional experience, although we've kind of talked as though you might get that interpretation. But we've had students that are right out of undergraduate. So sometimes we get students with master's MPH, Masters of Public Health, but they didn't get the spatial curriculum, so they come in and just do the certificate. If you have the background and you have the interest, then we want you in the program. If you have interest in spatial analysis, sure. So it's a mix of both right out of undergrad and professional experience.
And can you touch on a little bit more about the library resources?
Yeah, there's no longer really a physical library that I've attended, in recent years. We have one right across the street from the school, but again, we're all online. But you have your Hopkins, when you log into a Hopkins system, via that what Tim mentioned, your JHEAD, your Johns Hopkins ID, you have access to pretty much every journal out there, in terms of downloading articles and so forth. And this is part of your integrative activity. If you're in the master's program, you start doing a small lit review around the topic you're interested in. So you got to download articles, read them, and we ask you to summarize that as part of the assignments leading up to that integrative activity. So you have full access to the library system, both within Hopkins and in all the journals outside of Hopkins as well.
And maybe I'll add to that there's a library physically right on campus. We're on the East Baltimore campus. And a few miles away is the Homewood campus. And they're actually the people who house the site license for Esri. You have access to everything there, all the books and services there. And within there, there's a group called the Government of Publications and Services, government Publications and Services, and they have a ton of GIS data resources that we often tap into as well. And I'm sure there's libraries down in our DC campuses too, but yeah, as Frank said, you have access to all of that. Some of that can be physical access as well as virtual access.
I think that is the end of the questions. Any closing comments, Frank or Tim?
If you have questions, feel free to reach out. If you can hunt down my email, you're welcome to email me. If not, you can go through the Opal office, or Kelly can direct you. But a lot of times students have specific questions or just want to kind of talk through things one-on-one. And I've had plenty of one-on-one Zoom calls or just telephone calls with prospective students just to answer some of their questions and tell them a little bit more about the program.
Yeah, I've actually referred a number of students to speak with Frank who had additional questions beyond, what I can answer, beyond what's on the website. So it's nice that you make yourself so readily available. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending today's virtual open house. If you do have additional questions or are excited to start your application, please reach out to us here in the admissions office. My contact information is on this last screen. We do look forward to working with you, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Everybody.